What's up, everybody? Welcome to You Think. This segment we like to call What We Saw. Just events around the sports world that we think, even though they might not necessarily been directly connected to the youth sports world, we do feel like there's a lot of lessons, both good and bad, that we can pull out of it and implement it with our own children, our own teams, the young kids that we are ultimately responsible for coaching. So the first thing, I'm sure everybody saw it, was a national primetime moment. It was hard to see, was Tua Tagovailoa again, suffering a pretty significant head injury. Unfortunately for him, we've seen it now play out live a few times. I can tell you from a firsthand experience, seeing a teammate on the field in that moment is difficult. You see the body posturing, you see the kind of the rigid frame. Guys know when things don't look good, and when they start waving quickly for guys that come off the sideline to lend help, that's always a scary thought. It does seem, a quick update, it does seem like he's up and about and he's around the facility and active with the guys. Mike McDaniel gave a nice update on him. So, I think this leads to the question I probably get the most, which is, how do you structure a youth football practice to prepare kids for contact, but also understand that they're young and they can only take so many blows to the head, and you want to keep them ultimately safe? And I think that's the number one job of a youth football coach. We see all these crazy videos online of just kids just repeatedly just smashing themselves into each other at ages of 6 or 7, and coaches and adults are yelling and pumping them up. And yes, there is an element towards building toughness and building the ability to have contact. And again, I'm not shying away from any of that. But I think those days personally are over. That is not how we run our football team. Our teams are tough. Our kids play hard. We block hard. We tackle. If you ask any of the kids on our team, when they leave practice, we are not killing them from a physically contact standpoint. We block live, yes, but it's always individual, small groups where we can control how many bodies are around, where's the contact coming from, and really teach these kids how to both prepare and brace for contact, and also have the skills and the tools to protect themselves. Everyone, associates toughness with the world of contact and tackle football at a young age. And certainly that's part of it, but technique and tools to protect yourself, to tackle someone appropriately and physical and get after them, but not put yourself in harm's way. Like, those are the things that as young football coaches, I believe ultimately we are really responsible for. So at our practices, yes, we tackle and we teach our ball carriers and our defenders how to tackle, but it isn't a controlled environment where everyone is clear on the angles, the angle of impact. We're not surprising guys, hitting them from behind, hitting them from the side. And it builds the confidence that I am prepared to take this contact. I am prepared to know how the technique that I can protect myself. And to me, that's where practice is. Now, when it gets into the game, it's a non-controlled environment, and they need to feel what that looks like when it's a little bit more unpredictable. But it all starts with how you teach contact in practice. And if done right, unfortunately, there are kids that are going to get hurt. There are kids that are going to have freak plays. And that's unfortunate. Unfortunately, I would love to wave a magic wand and take all of that out of the game. What we have seen is more kids are hurt hitting the ground than they are actually hurt from contact of another player. So teaching kids how to fall, teaching kids how to brace themselves, like, all those things sound very silly, but it goes a long way to giving kids the ability to protect themselves and brace and learn how to take contact. Confidence, skill sets. That is our job ultimately for all things in sports. And when it comes to football, the contact component of it is something we have to take very seriously. I don't know if anyone saw this. I live in Carolina, so ACC news obviously is a big deal around here. A couple years ago, Wake Forest and Ole Miss did what they call a home and home. So you come play me, I come play you. We each get a home game out of it. And Lane Kiffin, he's got Ole Miss rolling. SEC is a pretty dominant brand of football. They went into Wake Forest and beat them pretty significantly. Shortly after, a day or so, maybe even that evening, it came out that Wake Forest was buying themselves out of the second half of the home and home. Next year, they were supposed to go visit Lane Kiffin and Ole Miss down in Oxford. They were able to pay a fee. It was like over $1 million, and they don't have to go. So the question is, why do it? Again, we don't know all the specifics. On face value, it just says, okay, Wake Forest just doesn't feel like they're in a position to take their kids down there. It's a school that has some money. Most of the time you go take a beating in college football, it's because you need the money. The term is kind of blood money. So the question becomes, what is appropriate level of competition, whether it's college or in our case, youth sports? And I think that's something that every coach has to balance. There is a balance between saying we could artificially create any record we want, especially in sports like baseball and basketball, where you choose what tournaments you play in. You could enter baseball tournaments and win every single game, or you could enter into baseball tournaments and never win a game all season long, just based on the level of competition you choose to enter. So I'm a big believer in you need to put your kids in as competitive an environment as possible, while there is still some level of expectation that you can have success. You can't just send your kids out there every single day to get their brains beat in and say, oh, it's good for them. At some point, you need to have success both individually and collectively as a team. You also don't want to enter into tournaments where you are just far superior than everybody else in the bracket, and you win every game by 10 run rule, and you come home feeling really, really good about yourselves, but your kids were never tested, they never faced any adversity, and there was no real growth optimism. That's what I would say at the youth level, where we have a little bit more control. At the college level, I mean, we're talking SEC, ACC football at the highest level. I think it's a bad look. I think it sends the message that we believe we're inferior. We are not ready to go play with the big boys. Yeah, you lost by 40. Show the kids, recruit kids, show them saying, hey, listen, there is opportunity for you as a young player to come here and build into improving our team so we can go down to Oxford and be competitive even if we can't really win. So I'm not so sure at that high competitive level where wins and losses do matter, where the expectations of that do matter. Very different than at the youth level, where development is at the backbone of everything we should be doing. So that was a big story around here. I think there's a lot of lessons for us to take, good and bad, into our youth sports teams. One of the big headlines this weekend, it was in the NPR, and it was the question they posed was, if you want to get ahead in youth sports, try staying back a year. And reclassification, when I was growing up, was something that was very, very rare. There was a handful of kids based on your birthday, based on maybe by 8th grade, you were a little smaller, underdeveloped. And there was the notion of, hey, he's young enough that if we do repeat 8th grade or we do repeat a grade to try to let you kind of age and catch up to your peers, by the time you're a junior or senior in high school, everything's kind of leveled out. And it was used very sparingly. We are seeing kids now turning 19 early, fall in some cases, if not right after the new year of their senior year in high school. And right now, people are understanding that the best way to dominate youth sports is to be older than everybody. There is an inherent advantage at ages 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, that window of both prepubescent and postpubescent children, where the postpubescent, the bigger, the older, the faster, the stronger. Those kids are the ones that everyone wants on their team. Those are the kids that make the all-star teams. Those are the kids that make showcase events, because there is a significant difference between a 13-year-old postpubescent boy and a 12-year-old prepubescent boy. It's like they're 4 years apart in some cases on a maturity scale. I understand why people do it. It's very hard to have your son or daughter be the young kid in today's world if their aspirations are to play on competitive teams. Unless you are a uniquely gifted young child, it's going to be very hard for you to keep up with older, more developed, more physically mature kids. The question we have to ask ourselves is this experience leading to more youth success, or is it leading towards more, we'll call it high school, junior and senior year in high school? Is that success following you? And ultimately, if the success is following you and this allows you to get into better colleges, have more opportunities to play beyond the high school level, then it's definitely something that families should consider. It's a good investment. It's a good strategy to give your son or daughter every opportunity they can have to be successful. And I say to parents that want to do it, if your child loves it, and this is the next step of going from being young to just kind of back in the ball game age-wise, do it. But if the advantage is because you want to dominate 12-year-old football, or you want to dominate 11 and 12-year-old baseball, then I think we got to think twice about it, right? Because that success may not be sustainable. You may be the biggest, strongest kid on the block now, but in 4 years, when everyone else hits puberty and everyone else physically matures and you're no longer the big physical, older, dominant kid, are you still at an advantage? And I think we're going to see how this plays out. But there is no question, being a 19-year-old senior who's a grown man or a grown woman, you have a significant advantage over 16 and 17-year-old kids. That is just biology. That is just genetics. And that's just the way it goes. So I understand why they do it. But I think we're going to really get a nice case study over this 10-year cycle about what are the outcomes? Are we getting the ultimate outcome that everyone thinks they're getting, which would be college and beyond? We'll find out.